Modern Warfare 2 multiplayer has just dropped, and I've spent the last 3 hours sweating it out, dialing in, adjusting and honing my game settings and my controller settings to make sure I've got the best possible settings for competitive gameplay. Some of these settings are user preference, but there are a few sneaky ones in there that you'll definitely want to have to make sure you've got the best competitive advantage. So stick with me, we'll go through them and we'll make sure you get dialed in as best as possible. We're going to start off with the quick settings. A lot of these, as I say, are very user preference, like input devices and input stick preference layout presets. But for example, stick sensitivity, while you do need a varying degree of skill to control analog sticks at various different sensitivities, I would personally try and hone your ability and stick with one to help build muscle memory. So 5 or 6 is acceptable. I think 6 is the minimum that I would play on, and is what I recommend. Mouse sensitivity, I don't play on that, so I'm not going to try and advise you. Next, we'll dive into controller settings. We're going to go over the basic controller settings, advanced controller settings, and then later on in the video we'll look at the Xbox Elite Series 2 specific controller settings. So input device, obviously controller. Button layout, you can do some custom mapping. You can flip some presets. The main important things here are to adjust your ADS sensitivity multiplier. I have it on 90. You can run 80. 0.9, 0.8. We've spoken about stick sensitivity. There are a few different options here. You want to have your aim down sight as hold. You don't want to toggle that unless you need to for accessibility reasons. Automatic tack sprint off. With a game that is very lane based and very sort of directional, corner to corner, point to point, holding an angle, you don't want to be automatically tack sprinting because you will get caught with your gun down, and you won't be able to engage the enemy as quickly as you could if you didn't. Equipment behavior is hold. This is again a personal preference. Weapon mount activity, ADS and melee, whatever it is you've got set for melee. This is a relatively new setting where you prioritize interact or reload. Personally, I prefer to prioritize interact, meaning that if you are reloading and there is an interact available, so to open a chest or open a door, you can simultaneously do that by tapping to interact but holding down to force to reload. If you prefer the inverse of that, obviously swap to prioritize reload. Armor plate behavior, you can have apply all, apply one. This is for Warzone 2. Personally, I think apply all is the better go here because you can cancel them, but it is down again to preference. Aim assist on. Personally, I stick with the default, but if you read alongside here, we've got precision, focus, and Black Ops, which is more traditional aim down slow to targets in the Black Ops games. I personally stick with default. You should try it out, but default's the best one for me. Aim response curve is dynamic. There's some great videos on YouTube about how aim response curves works, but dynamic essentially gives you an S curve for more fine aim rate control, so you can make those smaller adjustments easier. You've got standard and also linear, but dynamic is probably the best for competitive gameplay. ADS sense multiplier, again, when you're focused, down to 0.9. ADS sensitivity, transition time and instant. Dead zones, so you want to have your dead zones as low as possible or as high as possible depending on your controller. If you have stick drift, I have to have mine up at a 0.1, but if you can bring it down to a 0.7 or a 0.6, even going as low as a 0.1, do that because it will give you the most fine-tuned ability. So dead zone is where you can move your stick and it will or will not have impact on your in-game movement. So to make fine-tuning adjustments, you want to have this down as low as possible. I have to have it due to the age of my controller at this, but again, I would try and have it down at like a 0.7 if you can. Left trigger and right trigger, you want to have this down at 0. So this is essentially how much you need to push the trigger before it's active. You don't want anything there. You want it to be hairline. You want it to be going as quickly as possible. Tactical sprint behavior is toggle. so you don't have to hold to keep sprinting. Auto move forward off, so you're not just running around everywhere. Single tap to sprint. Grounded mantle on. Automatic airborne melee to partial. Partial will make sure that you automatically mantle only if you can prevent a fall. So you don't want to be mantling if you're not gonna fall off wherever it is that you are. Automatic ground mantle is off. You can invert slide and dive behavior, but I've got it to standard, so it's tap to slide and hold to dive. You can invert those as suggested. Plunging underwater is movement based, so you can sprint and look down to plunge underwater. You can have that as plunge freely, so basically that you look down to move and move forward to plunge underwater. Personally, I've got it to movement. Auto deploy parachute, you probably want that off, and sprinting to bash doors is on. So these are really important ones. Quick C4 detonation, again it is slightly personal preference, but I like to have this on. I want to detonate my C4 if I need to detonate my C4. I don't want to have to throw all of them out to get that going. Depleted weapon switch on, so if I run out of ammo it automatically switches me over. Weapon mount exit delay is short, so it's the shortest amount of time possible before the animation ends. Vehicle camera recenter, short delay, you want to have that so it's as quick as possible. Ping wheel delay, moderate, and double tap danger ping, moderate. So again, you can have these on short or off or moderate. I personally prefer them on short, but I just didn't touch that one. Moving on down to graphics. So you're gonna have some different options if you're on a PC or if you're on an Xbox, or a PlayStation. You want to have on-demand textures probably off. This will only show local textures. Will downgrade the visual quality of the game, but it will make sure that you have better FPS. You can keep it on or off. Again, it's preference. There are some additional settings here, but if you want competitive advantage, I'd probably have that off. If you want it to look a bit more pretty, have it on. Next up is post-processing effects. You want to have most of these off. Just copy these settings. These essentially are making the game look a little bit more cinematic. I personally prefer clarity over cinematics. Fidelity, FX, cast though, you do want this on. This will sharpen up the rendering of the scenery around you. You can pull this up to around 50 or 60. Personally, I have it on 60. You want 120 Hz on as long as your monitor can support that, and you want to bring your field of view up to 120 to make sure that you can see everything that's going on around you. Third person FPS, field of view is at max. You want the first person and third person camera movement on the least possible, along with the rest of these settings. Safe area and brightness, obviously personal preference to your monitor and to what you can see. Next up is audio. Audio, I've gone for the headphone mix. You've obviously got ones to match your equipment, but headphones is the best one I've found with the tighter dynamic range and EQ for headphones. Bass boost is an option, but it will boost all the other bassy sounds around you. Headphone audio typically have quite weak drivers, so you can boost the bass there, but I would stick without a boost to not try and muddy up that low end of the frequencies. I've got master volume on 100, music volume on 0, dialogue volume around 30 depending on what your preference is, effects volume up high, hit marker about 50%, just so it's not in your face when you're trying to shoot people. You want to have mono off, subtitles on whatever you fancy. Voice chat is again personal preference depending on what you're into, and the rest is on just by default. Moving down into interface, most of this for me is at default. There is some color options here that you can help crank a lot of the intensities of the colors, or nerf some of the intensities of the colors, but again it's all kind of down to personal preference in my opinion. last up is a count and network. So have text chat on. There's a block list setting. Make sure you've got space in your block list. It does cap out at 200. Network information, you can have that open. And that pretty much wraps up the settings for Modern Warfare 2. So I'm going to go into now the specific settings for the Xbox Elite 2 controller. So this here is my mapping, my custom mapping for the Elite 2 wireless controller Series 2 for Xbox. Obviously I use this on PC also, but this is how I've got it mapped out. I use the same preset that I had previously for Warzone 1 for Modern Warfare 2 and Warzone 2, and that is as follows. So on the left hand side, so the left hand, the top paddle is a Y, so I use this to switch weapon and to play up. On the right top hand I have an A for jumping, B is down on the right bottom paddle. So that allows me to jump and slide and dolphin dive all with my right hand, and play and change weapon with my left hand. You can see there is an S on both of the thumbsticks, a kind of S curve. That means I've got dynamic response curve also on these sticks themselves, not just in the game. And this is what I find is best case scenario for the Elite 2 controller. That pretty much wraps up everything we've got to talk about today. We will be covering all Warzone 2 and Modern Warfare 2. We're streaming it live pretty much every day, daytime and evening. So make sure you subscribe. Helps me out a bunch, and you can keep up to date with the latest in Modern Warfare 2. Peace out.